Hey everyone, this is Alisa Childers for crossexamined.org. And today I want to talk to you about why I think every Christian should be an evidential investigator rather than an experience junkie. So if you grew up in the church like I did, chances are you had a few transcendent type mountaintop experiences, maybe at a summer camp or on a mission trip. Now, I had never really investigated the intellectual side of my faith. So if someone would have asked me when I was a kid and even a young teenager, why are you a Christian? I would have referred to one of these mountaintop type experiences as confirmation that Christianity was true. Now, there's someone else who has a similar story. So on a past video, I talked about 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, who's the son of the famous evangelist 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 deconstructed out of the Christian faith and into secular humanism. And when he appeared on the Unbelievable podcast to have a discussion with 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, he described his initial conversion to Christianity this way. Here's what he said. There's hundreds of kids there. It's Saturday night. There's candlelight and firelight, and everybody's singing, "Our God is an awesome God," and "We love you, Lord." And in the midst of that kind of environment, I had what I guess you would call a transcendent moment. I felt something. I felt like there was something happening in that room that was bigger than the group. I felt like I was connecting to something, and in that moment, that was God. I heard something. It was real to me. People that don't believe in transcendent experiences, I always think like, you haven't been to the right concert. You haven't used the right drugs. You haven't fallen in love with the right partner. These experiences are real, and I think whatever narrative you're in when you have one, it confirms that narrative. If I would have had that same transcendent moment with my friends in a mosque in Afghanistan, it would have confirmed Islam to me. But I was in the Christian world. So from that point on, Jesus was real to me. So in 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's own words, he became a Christian because of a transcendent experience, a feeling that resonated really deeply in his heart. His Christianity was confirmed by experience. But as we all know, experiences can fail us. So here are 3 reasons why I think every Christian should be an evidential investigator rather than an experience junkie. Number 1, you can be talked out of an experience. So famous actor Brad Pitt was also raised in a Christian home by evangelical Christian ministers. And in an interview with GQ magazine, he remembered experiencing some of the same feelings at rock concerts that he felt in Christian worship services. Here's what he said. I remember going to a few concerts, even though we were told rock shows are the devil, basically. Our parents let us go. They weren't neo about it, but I realized that the reverie and the joy and exuberance, even the aggression I was feeling at the rock show, was the same thing at the revival. One is Jimmy Swaggart and one is Jerry Lee Lewis, you know? One's God and one's devil, but it's the same thing. It felt like we were being manipulated. What was clear to me was, you don't know what you're talking about. So Pitt was wondering if the whole thing was just a manipulative sham, which led him to ask more serious questions at a really young age. So if a feeling or experience is what a person's faith is built upon, it can be easy to reinterpret that experience or even explain it away, especially when confronted with the reality of crushing evil and suffering or the arguments of a smart skeptic. So the second reason I think every Christian should be an evidential investigator rather than an experience junkie is because our hearts and feelings lie. The prophet Jeremiah referred to the human heart as deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Proverbs 3:5-7 tells us not to lean on our own understanding. Jesus even described the human heart as being filled with thoughts like murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, and slander. Proverbs 28:26 tells us that whoever trusts in his own mind is a fool. So in other words, do not, under any circumstances, follow your heart. Now, of course, this is the complete opposite of the themes that we're constantly encountering on social media and in entertainment. But when it comes to spiritual beliefs, trusting our feelings and following our hearts can lead to all sorts of aberrant theology, sinful choices, and a distortion of the true Christian faith. The third reason I think every Christian should be an evidential investigator rather than an experienced junkie is because you can fall back on evidence in times of doubt or in times of suffering. So one of the greatest apologists and evangelists in recent times is a man named Nabil Qureshi. Nabil grew up in a Muslim home, and after years of testing the claims of Christianity and the claims of Islam, he left Islam and became a Christian. He paid a great price for this. He left his devout Muslim family heartbroken, and relationships were strained. But just at the peak of his growing and fruitful ministry, Nabil received news that he had stage 4 stomach cancer. At the age of 33 and with a new baby in tow, he believed that God was going to heal him, that there would be a miraculous intervention and an amazing testimony to tell after the healing had happened. And so a little over a year after receiving his diagnosis, he died. He documented his cancer journey on YouTube, and in one of the early videos, he expressed that he was a bit rattled by the grim prognosis. But he went back through his theology and all of the evidence for his belief in Christ. On his deathbed, looking worn and really like a shadow of his former self, he glorified God by doing the exact same thing. He expressed disappointment and wonder as to why he hadn't been healed, but he testified to the existence of God and the truthfulness of Christianity based on what he knew was true. Nabil was faithful to the end, despite his suffering, despite any doubts that might have crept into his mind in the last days. But this is because he had a firm understanding of truth, and he submitted his feelings to that truth. His faith was not dismantled by doubt, suffering, even excruciating pain, or death. So at the end of the day, Christianity isn't always going to feel good. Just ask the Apostle Paul, who was kidnapped, beaten, whipped, imprisoned, ridiculed, shipwrecked, and stoned, all before he was finally beheaded. Christianity isn't always going to feel like it's working. Becoming an evidential investigator rather than an experience junkie is what led former atheist J. Warner Wallace to this conclusion. He said, "I'm not a Christian because it works for me. I had a life prior to Christianity that seemed to be working just fine, and my life as a Christian hasn't always been easy. I'm a Christian because it's true. I'm a Christian because I want to live in a way that reflects the truth. I'm a Christian because my high regard for the truth leaves me with no alternative." In my experience, when I went through my own faith crisis, it wasn't the transcendent experiences that got me through. It was learning the evidence for the truthfulness of the worldview of Christianity, and that's what I found persuasive. That's what I stand on in times of doubt and suffering. It's wonderful to know that Christianity is true, whether I feel it or not. If you want to learn more about my ministry, you can go to youtube.com/𝗲𝗄𝗏. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at 𝗲𝗄𝗏, or you can check out crossexamined.org.